Hey guys, tonight we're going to step inside a world you might not have survived, a world where passion didn't look the way you expect, and pleasure had little to do with softness or smiles. The air tastes like sweat and olive brine, and your stomach's been empty so long, even raw garlic smells like heaven. You're 13, barefoot, and bruised. And if your sandals aren't tied perfectly, someone twice your size will fix that mistake with a fist. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, let me know in the comments, what time is it where you are, and where are you tuning in from? Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake with your face in the dust, the sky above you an endless blue you're too afraid to admire. Your arms are stretched tight behind your back, bound at the elbows with a rawhide cord that chafes against your skin like the tongue of a cruel god. Across from you, another boy whimpers. You don't know his name. That's by design. You'll either beat him or be beaten by him, and there's no room for friendship when everything's a test. Welcome to the Spartan Agoge. Childhood here is more of a rumor than a memory. Your body is not your own, it belongs to Sparta. And if Sparta decides to chain it to a training post until your knees buckle from exhaustion, so be it. You're taught that desire is a weakness, softness a sin. If you cry, it's not from pain, it's because someone saw you flinch. And yet, the pain is confusing. It's sharp, but strangely intimate. When your instructor's shadow leans over you, looming, wordless, terrifying, you feel something stir beneath the bruises. Not affection, exactly. Not attraction, just attention. A warm force that notices you in a world where noticing is rare. Your stomach twists, not with hunger this time, but something stranger. Historians still argue whether the agoge was designed to repress desire or redirect it. The line between punishment and intimacy blurs quickly here. One mainstream historical fact: boys in the agoge were often paired with older youths mentors ostensibly for guidance. But the emotional bond, and sometimes the physical one, could become much more than that. And so, your lust, the thing they say you must master, gets woven into the very system meant to extinguish it. You're taught to resist women not by avoiding love, but by learning to channel it, to bury it under discipline, to transmute it into loyalty, admiration, pain. Your thoughts of tenderness find shape not in kisses, but in the aching press of your back against the cold bronze of a hoplite shield. There's this one boy smaller than the rest, but fast. His name slips past your lips in sleep, though you pretend not to know it. He helps you when you fall, even though no one's supposed to. You share a crust of barley bread under the flickering shadows of torchlight. His laughter sounds like something forbidden, like warm water in winter, and still, you do not speak of it. Fringe scholars whisper that such bonds weren't just allowed, they were encouraged. The logic? A soldier who loved his comrade fought harder to protect him. Lust, twisted into loyalty. You're not supposed to want him, and yet, every time your shoulders brush in the mess hall, your chest tightens, a silent rebellion pulsing beneath your ribs. The nights are the worst. You lie in a pile of hay that still smells faintly of goat. Your tunic scratches at the raw skin between your thighs, where the rope wore you down earlier. You shift slowly, trying not to let the others hear your breath hitch. The moonlight through the thatch roof patterns your chest like silver bars. You're caged, but not alone. All around you, bodies twitch in dreams, in silence. The communal suffering binds you together tighter than any oath. Your feet throb where you ran barefoot over stones, punishment for speaking out of turn. You can still feel the sting of the instructor's rod across your calves. But what haunts you isn't the pain, it's how your body reacted. How heat blossomed where you expected only shame. How a part of you leaned into it, just for a second. There is no softness here, no mother to stroke your hair, no lover to whisper your name. And so your need for affection, for recognition, for touch it, gets funneled into pain, into ritual, into service. It warps, but it does not vanish. Some accounts say that boys in the agoge were expected to steal their food to survive and punished not for the theft, but for getting caught. That same logic seems to apply to feeling anything at all. You're allowed to want, but only if your want becomes something useful, if it sharpens your spear arm, if it makes you bleed more quietly, if it pushes you to stand up one more time when your knees scream at you to stay down. Tonight, your knees do scream. They creak as you sit by the hearth, a rare reward for surviving another day. The embers throw weak light across the room, painting the walls with flickering ghosts. The older boys joke about the blush in your ears when a certain name is mentioned. You pretend not to hear. You drink bitter broth from a wooden bowl, the taste lingering like regret. Historians still debate whether these early emotional entanglements were love, lust, or mere dependency. But your heart doesn't care what the scholars think. It races all the same when his hand brushes yours as you pass him the ladle. The system works sort of. You grow stronger, quieter, hungrier, yes, but not just for food. You learn to starve your body and feed your soul on glances, gestures, unspeakable connections that pass between bruised shoulders and clenched jaws. And just as you start to rest, another trouble begins. Because even as your bruises fade, something else starts to blossom under the laurel trees, something softer, more confusing. You're 15 now, maybe 16, though time here is slippery. The days blur like oil across sun-warmed stone, and the only markers of your growth are the calluses on your palms and the way your gaze lingers a second too long. Today, you're in the forest beyond the training grounds, gathering kindling, or at least pretending to. A breeze whispers through the branches, stirring the scent of laurel and pine sharp, clean, ancient. You crouch low, dirt under your fingernails, and then feel it, the quiet shadow of your mentor behind you. He doesn't speak. He doesn't need to. His name is Theocles. He's older by maybe 6 or 7 years old, enough to fight, to vote, to die for Sparta. His shoulders are broad, sun-darkened, always tense like he's waiting to be struck. And yet his voice, when he does use it, could flatten the pulse in your neck. Calm, almost amused. Like he knows everything and is only telling you a little at a time. Theocles doesn't touch you, not really. But his presence is a weight, a gravity. You feel it in the way he stands just close enough that the backs of your arms brush when you pass. In the way his sandal once stepped on yours beneath the laurel leaves and didn't move for just one breath too long. Mainstream historians describe these relationships as pedagogical pederasty, a mouthful that somehow reduces this storm of unspoken longing into a sterile transaction. But it wasn't sterile, not to you. Not when your skin prickles each time you share a wine cup. Not when he laughs and it slices through the grim silence of your daily routine like honey through smoke. Your tunic, still scratchy from last week's punishment, clings to your back with sweat. You sit cross-legged now, a branch across your lap, carving idle notches with a dull blade. He watches, says nothing, and it makes your chest thud in ways battle drills never did. The warmth in your stomach isn't hunger this time. It's the quiet knowing that someone sees you, not as a trainee or a warrior in progress, but as something human, something more, something close to beautiful. Fringe accounts from certain poet 7-1s banned in polite Athenian society speak of love as an educational force, as necessary as wrestling or rhetoric. The mentor molds the boy not just through lessons and lashings, but through affection, attention, admiration. And in return, the boy reflects back a kind of awe, a devotion that trembles on the edge of worship. But of course, none of this can be spoken aloud. Desire here is as camouflaged as a hair in brush. It wears the mask of discipline. Theocles corrects your stance with a firm hand on your shoulder, his fingers cold. You shiver not from fear, but from the memory his touch leaves behind like a ghost. One day, he gives you a gift. A small laurel leaf, folded into the shape of a bird. Keep it, he says, looking not at you, but somewhere into the trees. So you don't forget what's soft in the world. You don't understand what he means, not fully, but you keep it, pressed between pages of a battered scroll. You look at it some nights, when your bones ache and your thoughts grow too loud. Historians still argue whether these bonds had formal rights, or were simply tolerated shadows within the larger machinery of control. But in your memory, they're clearer than any war chant. Each glance, each word, each breath shared in the heavy green hush of the forest feels sacred, realer than the shield on your arm, deeper than the cuts on your knees. Your knees, by the way, are on fire today. You've been kneeling in the dust too long, scrubbing the training hall floor with a rag that smells like sour vinegar. The sun from the slats overhead hits your back in stripes. Your hands sting, raw from last night's drills. Your body is a ledger of bruises and blisters, but your heart is learning something stranger than violence. You never kiss him. Of course not. Not here. But once he let his head rest on your shoulder for the briefest moment, under the guise of exhaustion. And your whole body went still every nerve held its breath. You would have died before moving. He leaves soon. Off to campaign in Thessaly, or maybe Thrace. He doesn't say goodbye. No one does in Sparta. You just look up one morning and his place at the mess hall is empty, his cot stripped bare, his sandals missing from the wall. The absence hits harder than any punishment. You don't cry. Not because you're strong, but because the tears would make it real. Instead, you go back to gathering wood beneath the laurel trees. And each time a branch snaps, it sounds like a door closing in your chest. The laurel scent never leaves. It clings to your tunic, your skin, your memories. A soft green ghost of everything you were never allowed to want. And just when you think you've buried it deep enough to forget, you're summoned to a feast. The light is low and flickering, orange shadows dancing along the walls like drunken satyrs. You step barefoot into the Andronthe men's Hallet stone floor, cool against your sore feet, still aching from the morning's drills. You try to hide the limp in your step, but someone notices. They always do. There are no secrets here, only things whispered behind cups of wine and soft, slurred laughter. Tonight is your first symposium. You're not a guest, of course. You're barely 16 and still technically not a citizen, but you've been invited to serve, to observe, and maybe if the wine gods are kind to be seen. You clutch a silver crater, heavy and cold in your hands, and move between the low couches. Reclining men reach lazily for figs, almonds, and honeyed bread. Their fingers are dusted with salt and sesame. Their eyes drift over you like you're just another part of the furniture until they don't. The room smells of spiced oil, sweat, and charcoal smoke. It settles in your nostrils like velvet. A flute plays in the corner reedy, plaintive, slightly off-key. A boy about your age sits beside the flutist, bare-shouldered, adorned with a thin gold chain that gleams against his collarbone like sunlight on water. He doesn't speak. He doesn't have to. This, you realize, is where desire lives now. Not in forests or whispered gifts beneath the moon, but here in wine-dark rooms, between belly laughs and toasts, under the heavy gaze of men with too many stories and too much time. Mainstream historians describe the symposium as a social gathering for elite Greek menware politics mixed with poetry, and wine flowed like reason. But fringe accounts tell a more layered tale about the flute boys and cupbearers, about the fine line between entertainment and intimacy. You're part of that line now, balancing on it, barefoot and blinking in the low light. Your tunic, freshly laundered but already clinging with smoke, shifts against your skin. As you bend to pour wine, you catch fragments of conversation, half poems, half boasts. Someone makes a joke about a shield being a better bedmate than a wife. Another replies, "At least the shield doesn't nag." The men laugh. You do, too politely, quietly. One of them notices. "Eros has teeth," he says, his eyes gleaming as he licks honey from his thumb. He bites harder when you're young. The others chuckle. You're not sure if it's a compliment or a warning. Probably both. A hand pats the cushion beside him. You hesitate. You feel the heat rise in your cheeks. But your body obeys before your mind can protest. You sit. The cushion smells of wine and sandalwood. Your knees brush. He doesn't move away. This is not love. Not the aching, reverent kind Theocles offered you beneath the laurel trees. This is something else. Faster. Hungrier. A performance. The flute boy watches you from across the room, his fingers tapping silently in time with the music. You wonder if he feels it too, that strange dissonance between attention and affection. You try to focus on the conversation. Someone's quoting Sappho, now something about fire under the skin, the taste of desire in the mouth. The words drift over you like smoke. You barely understand them, but they spark something warm and familiar deep in your chest. One mainstream historical fact: Sappho's poetry, written on the island of Lesbos centuries before, speaks openly of gender desire, though many of her original verses were later destroyed, censored. or reinterpreted to fit straighter narratives. Still, the fragments survive, humming like buried coals. And here, among the almond shells and wine stains, you feel that same fire under your own skin. Not the grand blaze of love, but the smaller, itchier flame of being watched, being wanted, being weighed. "Smile," the man beside you says. His fingers brush yours as he takes the wine cup. You'll get more invites that way. You do smile. Not because you want to, but because it's easier than saying no. Historians still debate whether these feasts were liberating or exploitative, whether they celebrated fluid desire or masked imbalances of power behind poetry and charm. But for you, it's neither. It's simply survival. Another way to navigate a world that feeds on beauty, but never quite rewards it. Your thighs ache from sitting sideways too long. Your back stiffens each time the man beside you leans closer. You catch your reflection in a polished plate-wide eyes, flushed cheeks, curls falling loose around your ears. You look like someone else tonight, someone you're still trying to become. The flute boy begins a slower tune now, and the room softens, the laughter dims. One of the older men begins to recite lines from Anacreon, his voice slow and slurred. "Let us not chase women, we are too old." But the boys still burn like new wine. No one corrects him. Your mind drifts. You remember the fig tree behind the gymnasium, the one you used to climb before anyone noticed you'd grown too tall, the rough bark against your palms, the sweet burst of fruit between your teeth. You remember silence, safety, and how far away it feels now. And just as you're about to slip into that memory completely, a new guest enters the room, a man draped in dark blue, with eyes like polished obsidian. His presence pulls the air taut. Even the flute wavers. The man doesn't speak, not at first. But when he does, his voice is low and deliberate. Who here still believes in the gods? A nervous chuckle rolls through the room, but your chest tightens. Because you know, the way he says it, this isn't about religion. It's about devotion. About how mortals crave worship of beauty, of youth, of power, and how desire, once stripped of affection, starts to look more and more like prayer. You don't know it yet, but this question, this strange, slow inquiry, will follow you into the temple tomorrow, into marble halls where bodies stand still but never stop watching. The next morning arrives with a silence so deep it feels like something sacred. The symposium's laughter lingers only as a bitter film on your tongue. You walk uphill through the marble streets, the sun not quite over the Acropolis yet, your sandals slapping against the cool stone. There's a heaviness in your chestnut dread, not guilt, just the echo of something unspoken. The temple is still and white. Its columns loom like giants, and the air inside is cool and dry, scented faintly with beeswax and crushed cypress leaves. You've been here before, but never alone, never this quiet. You pass through the open doorway and into the sanctuary, your steps muffled on the worn tiles. The light here is golden, filtered through high slats, touching everything gently, as though even Apollo's gaze must tread carefully. And then you see him. Not a priest, not a man, a statue. Hermes, or maybe Ganymede, you're not quite sure. The marble is smooth, unblemished, nearly glowing. One hip juts slightly forward, his hand curled in a gesture that suggests he was once holding something, perhaps a cup, or maybe a key. His lips are parted just enough to suggest breath. His eyes, though blank, seem to see you. You stop. Something in your stomach dips and tightens. You shouldn't feel this, but you do. You feel seen. Not for what you area trainee, a wine pourer, a boy with good posture and quiet manners, but for what you could be. Beautiful, desired, immortal. Mainstream historical fact. Greek temples often featured idealized statues of gods, heroes, and mythic youths crafted, not just to be worshipped, but to inspire worship. And in these marble forms, the Greeks found perfection, not in women, not in family, but in symmetry. In youth frozen at the cusp of manhood. You walk closer, your breath shallow. The statue's torso is flawless, softly muscled, not like a warrior's, but like a dream of one. His stomach tapers, his chest rises, as though caught mid-inhale. The skin is cold to the touch when you brush it, a sin you pretend was an accident. You can't look away. Your knees creak a little as you crouch at the base. You're not praying, you're just resting. That's what you tell yourself. But deep down, you recognize the pose. It's the same way you used to kneel when Theocles taught you to tighten your sandal straps. The same angle your body took when the man at the symposium reached for your hand. You shift on your heels. The marble seems to watch you, indifferent and divine. Historians still debate whether these statues were objects of reverence or veiled indulgence, whether the temples were meant to elevate or seduce. But in this moment, your body answers before your mind can catch up. You want to be seen like this, carved. Not vulnerable, but immaculate. Not weak, but admired. A fringe tidbit. In certain sanctuaries, votive offerings weren't always coins or incense. Some left kisses on the feet of statues. Others offered strands of hair, or folded scraps of poetry, hidden behind altar stones. You glance down at your tunic hem, then back at the statue. You consider leaving something, just something small, but you don't. Instead, you rise and turn away, your chest tight and your steps uncertain. The marble doesn't move, but somehow you feel dismissed, like it knew you too well, like it gave you something just long enough to take it back. Outside, the sun has risen fully. The white walls of the city are blinding. The streets bustle with vendors, now fig sellers, fishmongers, a woman yelling about olives from Corinth. The world is loud again. You shrink back into your tunic. You're not ready for the noise. Your hands smell faintly of cypress and dust. You rub them together, trying to erase the temple from your skin. Later, you'll find yourself sketching, on broken bits of ceramic, on the backs of wax tablets. Not statues, not exactly, but bodies. Shoulders, hips, lines curved in ways you still can't speak of. It won't be art, just scratching. But it will feel like scratching at something inside you that's trying to get out. And then the dreams will start. You'll see that same marble figure in your sleep, his blank eyes full of impossible warmth. He'll reach for you. And just before your hand touches his, you'll wake in the dark, tangled in your sheets, breath shallow, heart galloping like a war drum. Your feet sting from the chill floor as you stumble toward the wash basin, water splashing on your chest. You stare at your reflection in the bronze mirror. It's wavy, imperfect. You don't look like a god. You don't even look like a man yet. Just a boy with a racing heart and the scent of laurel still hiding in his hair. Historians might call this phase of life a training period, a liminal space between boyhood and citizenry. But for you, it's not a face, it's a storm. A quiet, sleepless ache wrapped in the smell of stone and sweat. And just as you begin to steady yourself, just as your breath slows and your reflection stops shaking, you hear the city bells. A call to assembly. Because now, the city wants you too. The bells echo down the marble streets like iron thunder, rolling from the Acropolis to the Agora, through alleyways thick with incense smoke and garlic breath. You tug your cloak tighter, though the day is warm. There's a chill crawling down your spine, like you're being summoned not just by sound, but by something older. Something that doesn't knock, it pulls. You join the crowd climbing the stone steps. Cloaks ripple in the wind. Sandals slap. Someone smells like fish. Someone else hums a drinking song under their breath. You walk in silence, your breath shallow, your mind still full of marble and lips that never moved. The assembly grounds overlook the sea blue, endless, too beautiful to make sense. But no one's looking at the view. All eyes are on the speaker's platform, where your city's leaders debate like gods and shout like drunks. You take your place on the edge, crouching low beside a stone pillar still warm from the sun. Your knees crackle, your thighs itch. You haven't eaten since the last fig you stole yesterday. And still, you listen. You learn early. In Athens, glory is a language. Men speak of it like it's honey in the mouth. Sweet, sticky, hard to forget. One speaks of honor in battle, another about law, about land, about defending the polis like it's a mother or a mistress. You nod along, pretending to understand, but you don't, not really. What you do understand, what you feel deeply, is that they love this city. They love her like she's alive, like she's their first crush, their final kiss, their everything. And in a strange, unsettling way, so do you. Mainstream historical fact. Athenians often referred to the city in feminine terms. Athens wasn't just a place, she was a being, sacred, worth dying for, worth more than family, more than self. You feel it now in the hush that falls as a war hero rises to speak. His tunic is stained, his beard wild, but his voice smooth as olive oil. He speaks of service, of pain, of sacrifice. He describes standing in a phalanx, shoulder to shoulder, so close you can smell your brother's fear, and you realize, this city doesn't just want your loyalty, she wants your body, your blood, your very breath. And maybe that's where your desire goes now. Not into secret touches or marble dreams, but into glory, into something you can hold with your hands, something others see. Because love here doesn't wear lace or whisper poems. Love here bleeds, it bruises, it gets carved into the side of a shield. Fringe scholars suggest that Athenian patriotism was eroticized, woven tightly with the language of desire. That when men died for the city, they weren't just defending a place, they were defending a lover. And here you are, flushed and listening, chest tight, hands clenched into the hem of your cloak. You don't know if you want to kiss the city or fight for her. You don't know if there's even a difference anymore. You spend the evening on the steps below the Pnyx, staring at the horizon. The sea throws gold at your face as the sun drops low. The city behind you murmur slaughter, horses, vendors closing shop. You don't move. You run a thumb along the edge of a pebble until it digs a groove into your skin. You think of Theocles, of the man at the symposium, of the statue, of the honey voice on the platform today. Your hunger has changed shapes so many times you can't remember what it originally looked like. Your knees ache as you rise. The cobblestones are still warm underfoot, but night brings a sharper wind. You wrap your cloak tighter not to hide, but to armor yourself. Because tomorrow, you'll enter the gymnasium. And there, among oil and sweat and polished limbs, you'll be expected to become someone else again. You stand at the threshold of the gymnasium, bare feet sinking slightly into the dust, the morning already thick with heat. Around you, the air smells like olive oil, chalk, and something faintly metallic sweat, maybe, or blood, though no one's bleeding. Yet, you step in, and the world changes. Inside these open-air walls, bodies move like poetry. Not the kind scratched onto tablets, but the kind etched into sinew and breath. Limbs stretch and twist. Muscles tighten, gleam, relax. Laughter echoes off limestone. Sand kicks up in soft bursts. Someone grunts. Someone else curses under his breath. And it's all strangely beautiful. This is not the Agoge anymore, not Sparta's brutality. This is Athens, and the gymnasium is a different kind of Templione that worships the male form not by breaking it, but by perfecting it. You rub oil across your chest, the slickness catching the sunlight. It's warm, heavy, and smells like thyme and crushed laurel. You watch it run down your forearms, between your fingers, over your ribs. You're not embarrassed, no one here is. Nudity isn't vulnerability, it's currency. Mainstream historical fact. In classical Athens, athletic training was done in the nude. Gymnasia weren't just places of exercise, they were social, intellectual, even philosophical spaces, where men sculpted not just bodies, but minds and ideals. And here you are, trying to stretch your calves while pretending you don't notice the way another boy's back arches mid-wrestle, his laugh cutting the air like a cool splash of spring water. His name is Diodoros. He's quick, clever, and always seems to be exactly where you're looking accidentally, of course. He pins someone to the sand with a grin. You glance away, then look back. It's impossible not to notice the curves of spine, the flex of thigh, the way tension and relaxation dance across each frame like shadows at dusk. You're supposed to be here to train, but part of you is floating, not on muscle ache or sunlight, but something lighter, something that stirs behind your ribs and makes your breath catch in strange places. And you're not alone. An older man watches from the colonnade de robes dark, eyes sharper than they should be for someone his age. He speaks quietly to another, gesturing toward the wrestlers. Their conversation isn't about technique. You know that instinctively. It's about potential, about beauty, about longing. Fringe accounts tell us the gymnasium doubled as a marketplace of attention, of admiration. It wasn't just about form, it was about connection. Boys noticed each other. So did the men. Some sought students. Others sought, Well, something else. The line was fluid, whisper thin, sometimes crossed without a sound. You slip into a match next paired with Diodoros, as fate or someone's nudge has arranged. His skin is warm, yours is clammy. You circle each other like cats, feet silent in the sand. And then impact. Your shoulders slam together, muscles tightening, legs locking. The world narrows. His breath is in your ear. Your grip slides, then holds. His knee nudges your hip. You tumble, roll, pin, flip. Your hands find his ribs. Your cheek grazes his jaw. And somewhere in the heat and chaos, you forget why you started wrestling at all. He wins, of course. You laugh too loudly, too nervously. He offers you a hand. You hesitate, then take it. Your palms stick a little from oil, but neither of you lets go right away. Historians still argue whether these gymnastic encounters were erotic by design, or simply erotic in effect. The truth, maybe, is that no one planned for it to feel this electric, but it does. Later, you sit under the colonnade, legs stretched, knees dusty, your ribs sore in a satisfying way. Diodoros lounges nearby, tossing pebbles at a column base, humming something off-key. Your stomach growls, your body stings, but your mind is far away, drifting somewhere between yesterday's statue and today's touch, between the man who once watched you beneath the trees and the boy who just pinned you to the ground. Ever been to Eleusis? Diodoros asks suddenly, not looking at you. You shake your head. He shrugs. They say the gods appear to you there. If you're open, the way he says it makes your skin prickle. You nod, pretending you understand, but the way your chest tightens says otherwise. You rise to wash. The stone basin is shallow, the water cool, clear, and filled with reflections. As you rinse the oil from your arms, you catch sight of your face flushed, bright-eyed, a little dazed. You don't look like a child anymore, and just as your hands settle into stillness, a quiet voice behind you says, "The law scrolls are being read at the Stoa today. You coming?" It's not a question. It's a test. Because after all this beauty and breath and a kingiz, the reminder, desire might be in the body, but power lives in the rules. And the rules don't always care how you feel. The Stoa is shaded and cool, a welcome contrast to the burn of the gymnasium. You sit on a low stone bench, legs still humming from the morning's drills, your knees marked with dust and quiet bruises. The scent of old parchment and beeswax drifts through the space, mingling with the sour tang of nearby chamber pots. Always, that smell a sour little reminder that beauty has limits, and Athens is still a city of dirt and sweat. Before you, a magistrate unrolls a scroll. The papyrus crackles like dry leaves, and the black ink glistens faintly in the dappled sunlight. His voice is steady, practiced. He's read this 100 times, maybe 1,000. You try to focus, but your mind lingers on Diodorus's shoulder, how it brushed yours as you sat down, how your heart stuttered, how you pretended not to feel it. The scroll details laws about citizenship, behavior, honor, and love, or at least what passes for love here. There are rules about who can touch whom, when, where, and why. Rules about shame, about excessive affection, about conduct deemed unmanly. The words are careful, clinical, and sharp. They don't describe feelings, they carve them. Mainstream historical fact. Athenian laws, especially those influenced by figures like Solon, regulated relationships between older men and younger boys, often more concerned with preserving dignity than suppressing desire. It wasn't the love that was condemned, it was the loss of control. You shift on the stone, it presses into your spine. Your thighs itch beneath your tunic. The sun glints off the scroll as the magistrate drones on. You catch a phrase. It is improper for the Eromenos to show pleasure. Improper. A word that sours in your mouth like spoiled milk. Beside you, an older man snorts. "That's rich," he mutters. "Half this council courted boys with poetry last spring." You stifle a smile, but it fades quickly, because the joke isn't really funny. It's a truth wrapped in laughter to make it easier to swallow. A fringe tidbit. In certain demes, graffiti still survives scratched into stone walls by unseen hands. Names paired with hearts. Crude drawings. Timon loves Echelos. Better a shield than a wife. whispered rebellions in the cracks of public order. You rub your forearms. They're cold, despite the warmth of the day. Maybe it's the wind, or maybe it's the realization that even now, someone could be watching, judging, measuring your silences. Historians still argue whether these laws were enforced, or simply ritualized reminders of a virtue that never quite existed. Whether they protected boys from exploitation or simply taught them how to hide it better. You glance at Diodoros. He's pretending to be bored, picking at a scab on his shin, but his foot taps a rhythm against the ground. He's listening. He's feeling this. After the reading, the crowd disperses in slow waves. You stay behind, waiting for the pressure in your chest to ease. It doesn't. A weight settles there thin as a thread, tight as a noose. You realize that every look, every brush of skin, every soft word exchanged in shadow now has an echo, a consequence, a rule. You walk alone toward the agora, the sun blinding as it bounces off white stone walls. The city pulses with life. Chickpea sellers argue with fishermen. A child chases a dog through a market stall. Somewhere, someone plays a lyre, soft and slow, and you walk, invisible in the noise. You pass the wall where boys leave votives for Hermesthi, god of travellers, of tricksters, of messages that should not be spoken aloud. There are olive branches tied with string, a broken sandal, a carved token with no name. You leave nothing. Not today, but you pause, just long enough to let the wind press its hand to your back. When you reach home, your father is reading. He looks up, nods once. You nod back. No words, none needed. He has no idea what you heard today. Or maybe he does, and chooses not to ask. Sometimes silence is more protective than speech. Your bed is simply straw-filled, rough. You lie back and let your fingers trace the seam of the wall. There's a crack there, a familiar one. You've stared at it on other nights when the air was too thick with thoughts. You think of the gymnasium, of the temple, of the smell of sweat and oil and crushed laurel, of Diodoros's hand, still oily, brushing your knee. And now, you wonder if you'll be allowed to remember it fondly. Because just as you start to drift into that warmth, a soft knock sounds at your door. A familiar voice follows. Want to come listen to the philosopher speak? And you rise. Because maybe, just maybe, there's a kind of desire that escapes the scrolls entirely. You follow Diodoros through the quiet streets, the late-day sun turning Athens to gold. The stones beneath your sandals are warm, but the air is cooling, now sweetened by fig trees, and the distant promise of bread baking in some oven you'll never see. He doesn't say much, just glances back now and then, to be sure you're still there, his silhouette always half a step ahead, always just out of reach. You pass the painted stoa, the one with stories etched in fading colour battles and ships, gods and kings. None of them seem real anymore. You barely notice them. Your thoughts are drifting already towards something slower, softer, stranger. The philosopher sits beneath a gnarled olive tree, legs folded, robes loose and dusty, beard like a grey storm cloud settling over his chest. A few others sit scattered in the dust around him, some young, some old, none speaking. They just listen. You and Diodoros lower yourselves onto a worn patch of earth. It smells faintly of old rain and crushed mint leaves. The philosopher raises his eyes, not looking at anyone and somehow seeing all of you. He begins with a question. What is love, if not the soul remembering its shape? You blink. Not the question you expected, not the one written on scrolls. No talk of rules, no warnings. Mainstream historical fact. This is Plato's world. Here, in the late 5th century BCE, philosophical luva filiae spoken of in lofty terms, far removed from bodies and laws. The soul longs for the good, and love, ideally, is what pulls it there. Desire as a ladder, a bridge, a whisper from the divine. You lean forward, your knees sting against the dry earth. The philosopher speaks of Eros not, the god with arrows and wings, but the force, the ache that drives us upward. He says it starts with the body, yes, with beauty, a face, a voice, a hand holding yours in the dark, but that's only the first rung. Stay too long there, he warns, and you'll miss the rest of the climb. You glance sideways. Diodoros is watching the old man with narrowed eyes. His hands are resting on his knees, fingers twitching slightly with each new sentence. The philosopher's voice drops to a murmur. True love, he says, is the soul recognizing itself in another and helping that self reach its best form. Fringe scholars scoff at this, of course. They argue it's an excuse, a way for men to cloak their appetites in virtue. And maybe they're not wrong. Maybe it is easier to speak of souls when bodies are too complicated to name. But here, under this olive tree, your body is quiet, your mind stills, and a strange comfort spreads in your chest, like someone just placed a warm stone in your hands and told you it had always been yours. You close your eyes, and suddenly you're climbing, not with your legs but with your heart. Each memory becomes a rung. The first time you saw Theocles smile, the weight of the wine crater in the symposium, the statue's impossible stillness, the scrape of your knees in the gymnasium, Diodoros's laugh, your own reflection in the basin, blushing and unsure. One by one they lift you, not away from desire but through it. Your shoulders relax. You hadn't realized how tightly you'd been holding them. Diodoros exhales beside you, the sound so soft it feels like a secret being shared. You look at him not for long, just enough. His face is unreadable, but his hand is there, resting close to yours, not touching, not reaching, just present. Historians still argue whether Plato's theory of love was genuinely idealistic or deeply repressive, whether it elevated the soul or simply erased the body. But for you, it feels like permission, to want something more. After the talk, the group scatters like dandelion seeds. You and Diodoros linger beneath the tree, watching the last rays of sun bleed into the horizon. I didn't get all of it, you admit. He shrugs. Maybe you're not supposed to. You both rise, your knees stiff. Dust clings to your tunics. A breeze picks up, cool now, and you feel it run down the back of your neck like a cold fingertip. As you walk back toward the city, Diodoros finally speaks again. If love is a ladder, do you think we're climbing it? You glance at him. He's not joking. You think for a moment, then say, maybe. Or maybe we're just sitting on the first rung, admiring the view. That makes him laugh. A real laugh. The kind that pushes your own lips into a smile whether you want it or not. The agora is quiet now. The vendor's gone, the oil lamps flickering. You pass a drunk man humming to himself, slouched beside an empty amphora. Somewhere in the distance, a lyre plucks a lazy tune. You wonder if the stars are watching you. You reach the fork in the road-on path to his home, one to yours. He hesitates, then says, "Same time tomorrow?" You nod, and just as you step away, your fingers brush. Not by accident, and not for long. You dream of a veil, thin and white, fluttering in slow motion like a bird's wing caught in a breeze. It covers a face you can't quite see, but the eyes behind it are downcast, unreadable, and still. There are flowers, crushed underfoot, some fresh, some wilted. You hear the distant sound of a lyre, not joyous, not sorrowful, just inevitable. When you wake, your tunic is pressed against your chest, soaked from the heat of your own skin. The morning is dull and grey, not gloomy, just silent, like the world is holding its breath. You rise slowly, your muscles reluctant, your feet dry and cracked. Today is the wedding. Not yours, not exactly, but it may as well be. You're 17 now, just old enough, just trained enough, just quiet enough to be trusted with a future. The elders have arranged it, and you didn't resist. Resistance wouldn't have changed anything. The girl's name is Eileen. You've seen her once, maybe twice once at a spring festival, once carrying water past the agora. She doesn't smile, she doesn't frown. She just moves through the world like a shadow trained not to disturb the light. Mainstream historical fact. In Athens, most marriages were arranged, often with girls as young as 13 and boys in their late teens. Love wasn't expected. In fact, it was barely discussed. Marriage was an alliance, a duty, a contract between households, not hearts. The house is small, but clean. The floor swept, the lamps lit. You are given a garland to wear and olive oil to slick your hair. You feel like a statue being prepared for sacrifice. Your reflection in the water bowl looks older than you remember, hollow-cheeked, eyes shadowed. She enters, veiled, small hands, delicate fingers, trembling ever so slightly as she clasps them. She doesn't speak. She bows her head. You bow yours. That is the extent of your beginning. There is food flatbread, soft cheese, dates soaked in wine. You don't taste any of it. There is laughter forced, polite, too loud. You barely register the sound. Your mind drifts. Back to the gymnasium, back to the philosopher, back to Diodorus's question. Are we climbing? Now, your hands are dry. Your shoulders are tight. Your body feels like it's dressed in someone else's story. Later, when the guests have left and the house quiets, you're led to the bridal chamber. It's small. The sheets are new. There's a bowl of rose water on the table, a silver comb. Her veil lies crumpled like a shed skin on the floor. You sit on the edge of the bed and stare at the wall. Your heart is racing for all the wrong reasons. She joins you slowly. Her hands are folded. Her eyes are kind, but distant. Like she's also remembering another version of herself, one that never quite fit into this evening. You lie beside her. You do what is expected, carefully, quietly, like performing a ritual for a god you're not sure you believe in. Fringe scholars sometimes argue that many Athenian men never developed true emotional intimacy with their wives, that their primary connections, emotional, intellectual, even erotic, were with other men. The marital bond was often functional, not personal. You feel it now, this divide. When she finally falls asleep, you watch the ceiling. The patterns of lamplight dance across the plaster. Your hands rest on your stomach. You feel like an actor who forgot the script but made it to curtain call anyway. The next morning, no one asks how it went. No one needs to. You've done your duty. You've crossed the threshold. You are now, officially, a man of Athens. A husband. Perhaps soon, a father. But something inside you sags. Not from regret. Not from grief. Just from the quiet weight of honesty. You walk through the agora later that day. People nod. Vendors greet you with slightly more respect. You buy olives without being followed by a suspicious glance. You are, by all accounts, successful. Settled, proper. And yet, your eyes search every face, every pair of shoulders, every echo of laughter. You don't find him. Historians still debate whether love, real love, could bloom in these arranged structures. Whether some learn to find intimacy over time, or whether most simply learn to numb. You hope Aline finds peace. You hope you do too. Weeks pass. You perform your roles. You listen. You nod. You lie still at night beside a body that neither hurts nor stirs you. You are grateful for her gentleness and ashamed of your own blankness. Until one afternoon, on the edge of the olive grove, you see him. Diodoros. He's older now, too broader, quieter, eyes shadowed in familiar ways. You greet each other like old friends. But your fingers don't touch this time. There is distance between you, and a silence. Congratulations, he says. Thank you, you reply. You don't talk about the ladder. You don't talk about climbing. You part with a nod. And just as you walk away, you hear his voice low, nearly lost in the wind. We were almost there, weren't we? You stop. But you don't turn around. Yes, you say. Almost. The years drift like candle smoke, slow and shapeless. You don't feel them passing at first, just a stiffening in your knees when you rise, a soft graying at the temples, the way your hands creak when you grip a scroll too long. You learn to pace your breath for speeches, not for running. You become someone who nods more than he speaks, someone others ask for advice, but rarely for joy. Your wife, Aline, is steady, kind. She never demands more than you can give. She bears 2 children, one quiet like her, the other with your nose and her silence. You learn to love them. Not in the fiery, breathless way you once imagined love might feel, but in the warm, constant pulse of duty, of presence, of care. Mainstream historical fact. In classical Greece, the word for love between spouse storges, rooted in affection and familial loyalty, not passion. Romantic attachment was not expected within marriage. Respect was the goal. Harmony, the ideal. You find moments of that harmony. The way she pours your wine in silence, the way your hands brush when both of you reach for the bread. You sleep beside her each night like two books pressed on a shelf bound together, not by fire, but by time. And yet, some nights, the marble returns. The statue, the unblinking eyes, the way the light once hit the curve of a lip, a collarbone, a thigh. You still dream of the laurel trees, of laughter in the gymnasium, of Diodorus's hand, reaching for yours in the dust. The dreams never ache, not anymore. They hum. They warm you like bathwater gone tepid, not hot, not cold, just gentle. You grow quieter. People begin to call you wise. You correct them with a smile. Not wise, you say, just slower, but inside, you know the truth. It wasn't wisdom that tamed your hunger. It was the slow erosion of longing, the way life teaches you to live with things half fulfilled. Fringe accounts suggest that many Greeks cultivated a kind of inner restraint, not because they were ascetic, but because they believed desire had to be shaped, sculpted, like clay. Unformed desire was dangerous, too wild, too close to the animal. You understand now what they meant. You have learned to live with beauty from a distance. You have loved without possession. You have wanted without taking. And in that practice, something new emerged. Not absence, but peace. You teach your son how to wrestle. You teach your daughter how to read. You recite Plato to them, skipping the parts they wouldn't yet understand, letting the words roll like river stones in their minds. You tell them love is many things. You let them find their own definitions. And one day, in the stillness of late summer, you hear that Diodorus has died. No one tells you directly. It comes in passing. A merchant mentions a name, a funeral, a small gathering near the olive grove. You walk there alone. No one stops you. The grove is nearly empty. Just a few stones. A small cairn, unmarked. No statue, no incense, just silence, and the trees whispering. You sit on a stone. Let your sandals rest in the dust. Your hands rest on your knees, your back gently curved like a bow half unstrung. You don't cry. You don't need to. The grief isn't sharp anymore. It's a quiet companion, a shape inside you that never fully left. You whisper something, not a prayer, not even a word, just breath, shared with the trees, the same trees that once held laughter, that once cradled the sound of your name, spoken in a voice you can still remember perfectly. Historians still debate whether the Greeks ever truly solved lust, whether their rituals and philosophies offered freedom or only redirection, whether restraint was healing or just another form of hunger. But you know this. Love is not always a flame. Sometimes it's a shape, a shadow, a presence that never quite touches you but never quite leaves. You walk home slowly, the dust curling up around your ankles. Your joints protest, your feet ache. Your cloak slips off one shoulder, and you don't bother fixing it. At home, Aline has left a bowl of grapes on the table. The light in the room is warm, flickering. You sit, you breathe. You eat one grape at a time, letting the juice linger on your tongue. You do not miss the fire. You do not chase the statue. You sit in the quiet, full in your emptiness. And in the fading light, you remember something the philosopher once said, that to love well is not to have, but to know, to see clearly, and then let go. And now, you lie back, your hands resting gently on your stomach. The world grows dim around the edges, like twilight slipping through linen curtains. The sounds of Athens fade the bustling streets, the voices, the bell sand, all that remains is the soft rustle of laurel leaves in the wind. Your body, older now, eases into stillness. The scratchy tunic, always too rough, feels softer somehow, worn thin by years and quiet mornings. Your feet stretch, heavy and warm, and the stone beneath you cradles your back like it always has, firm, cool, eternal. The statue is gone now. The trees have changed. The faces, the names, they've all faded into the gentle amber light of memory. But something inside you remains bright. A flicker of all you once wanted, and all you were brave enough to not take. You rest in that balançonneau regret, not pride, just peace. A stillness earned not by fighting, but by feeling fully and letting go. The city sleeps around you. The gods are quiet tonight. Even Eros, mischievous and wild, seems content to leave you alone. You close your eyes. The marble grows softer. The breath slows. And somewhere, far away but not forgotten, a laurel leaf floats gently to the earth.